You told me today, Spittin Chiclets, it was 7 years now.
Yeah, it could even be 8 in the Super Bowl. This past Super Bowl might have been 8 years. And we, myself and Rear Admiral, an interesting cat in his own right.
Newly single, by the way.
Yeah, newly single. He announced.
We have a lot of female listeners too, so they'll
Oh
probably
yeah,
go
we do
awesome.
too. We do too.
I think we have
Oktoberfest.
6.
Just recently announced his divorce in spectacular fashion, I'll say, the way he did it. But he had written blogs for Barstool for a long time. And when I was done playing, my wife was into podcasts. I didn't really know what they were. And she kind of mentioned, you should start one or think about it. And we had talked about something when we went to a tryout for the Blues. When our careers were really winding down, we both got a PTO, they call it, and neither one of us got a contract from the Blues. But while together, we had mentioned doing something when we retired. We'd played together in Pittsburgh and Wilkes-Barre in the AHL, and then we talked about it later. But he went his separate way to Manchester.
Yeah, I
won
kept
the AHL Calder Cup that year, and I signed with the Panthers. Ended up in the minors. So fast forward, and she mentioned it, and I said, "Oh, Biz and I had talked about doing something," and I just sent out a tweet. I think it was 2015, February, or maybe December 14, saying I'd love to do a podcast. I think I said about hockey, trending topics. It was a brutal tweet. And he wrote back, "I'm still playing. I can't do it yet. I got 2 goals at Christmas. It's a miracle." And I mentioned Colby Armstrong, another guy we played with in Pittsburgh, and he couldn't do it either. And this guy, Rear Admiral, he DM'd me. I'd met him a couple times prior for probably 30 minutes total. And he said, "Hey, let's do it." And I just went over to his house, recorded an episode, just us two on the couch, no producer, no anything. And we got enough listeners. Now, we've always said it's, without Barstool, I don't think there's ever anyone who hears it. Like, it was all about the platform we had that we could put it on. Did say, I always mess this up, maybe 40 episodes, and then he was done and hopped on, and then it was,
I went on as a guest a couple times, and like
yeah,
I let it
blew
fly.
up as a guest.
Yeah, I just like let it fly, kind of like I normally would. And the reason I didn't hop on right away because I was still playing, and I would have said something where the team was like, "Buddy, like what?" And even when I was with the Kings organization after the Coyotes, they were very anti-Twitter. So I kind of
When
went.
they signed you, they said that.
Yeah, they were basically like, "Hey, like we'll sign you, but stay the fuck off Twitter." Arizona Coyotes kind of needed that type of publicity, and it was great. It was a perfect landing spot. You talk about 1 in a million. They allowed the antics. When I went there, it all stopped. So I kind of just respected that, and it was also a good time to go away and kind of see what was happening. And at that time, that's when like Big Cat started blowing up, and KFC and Barstool in general. So. I mean, you go back to even the concept when we were in St. Louis, like we were fucking going out to dinner every night knowing we weren't going to make the team, having beers, and we go back to the room. And the concept is we'd go into a hockey locker room, throw our gear down, open up the bag and have beers in the locker room, and there'd be cameras like this set up. And we just have old guys in telling stories. And that was
never go on the ice.
It never end up going out there, just cracking beers and telling stories and having laughs. And then when he sent out the tweet about podcast, still had no clue what the fuck it was. And then, like, you know, he talked about the evolution of it, and yeah, just like those milestones, like getting Sid, and it just all took on a mind of its own and blew up to what it is now. And
I was very fortunate, though. I signed one big contract in the NHL, and then things went downhill with injuries and my play. But I was financially secure to where I knew I had to get a job when I was done playing, but I wasn't rushing into anything, and I was very lucky. And that's why I had the podcast. Had we not had Biz, I kind of would have just been, all right, yeah, me and RA are doing this on the couch, whatever. We make a couple bucks. I never thought of that, but that's great. But he had a business mind. Like, he's taken over since the beginning in terms of growing it, how to make it more kind of like financially good for us, I'll say, in terms of bringing in sponsors. So without him hopping on, it wouldn't be what it is, because he had the goal and the idea of like, we can make this even bigger. So I've just been following along.
Well, yeah, it was more about like, you know, in certain cases, especially when we were starting, it was more mom and pop. You know, some episodes you wouldn't have all the ads sold, and it just became a thing of like, well, if we're going to do the Sandbagger video and we want to make the production better, we're going to need our own more cameramen out there rather than just Pasha with the one, right? So those people cost money to hire, and you know, we need to have proper editors and kind of create this infrastructure so you can run this network of a lot of things that need to be done. I mean, you guys know the social component. We had this like hardcore super fan Chiclets Memes, who was a fan of the show, and he would just create memes for our show, and he was so good at them, and we'd be sharing them in our group chats, having laughs. So we eventually reached out to him, and he slowly was integrated into the pod where he runs all of our social now. So we were able to hire him. And at the time when he first started, we didn't have this huge budget, and we were just kind of growing, but we were able to pay him a decent amount, enough to start him. And year over year, he gets raises, and then, we kind of move on, and it's great. And
his name's Dale Morningstar. He's from London, Ontario.
That's his real name.
That's his real name. He's Chiclets Memes, but Dale Morningstar from London, Ontario, only wears cowboy boots and NASCAR jackets, has a mullet down to his shoulder, and talks like this. What's up, Colt? You want to go have a beer?
He's a carnival character.
And it's just, he's a cartoon. We've kind of formed, Barstool as a whole is like a whack pack.
Yeah.
It's a circus, and we kind of have our own within that of just different characters that have made kind of like a successful team.
Yeah, it's unbelievable what Barstool's
and
done.
only ones that are fully invested, right? You just get good pieces who care and create this family like element, as I'm sure you guys do.
That's what people think. I feel like it's like oh, two former players. You just get on a mic, you start talking, and all of a sudden people listen. But like, there's so much more shit behind the scenes to make it like actually.
Well, I mean, and the fact
go.
that like, Whit has a lot of credibility as a player, but fuck, is he a funny storyteller? And he's just a funny bastard.
But the thing is about pods for former athletes is anyone can, and I'm not trying to say nobody can do this. Like, anyone can get into it and they can be successful. Everyone has their stories. Everyone has a couple different things they can bring up. It's like week 10. All right, now I gotta like think of like relative stuff that's going on to talk about. And if you run out of your like story bank, that's when I think people think that it's going to be really easy, and they're like, oh, this is a little bit more of a grind. I get chirped by my buddies all the time. Like, you say you're working, and they're just busting my balls, but it ends up turning into more of a job than you think. We're not digging ditches or anything by no means, but there's a lot more preparation and kind of behind the scenes things that go into it than people think. I think most people are like, oh, they hop on a mic for 3 hours a week. Like, stop complaining. Not that we're complaining, but you're not working. It's like, well, no, we're not working a 9 to 5, but it's not nothing either.
Well, I'm sure you guys have a couple 100,000 people listening, and you feel you don't have a good show. You got to take that away for the next couple days. It sucks. It's kind of like back like when you played, right?
Yeah, I've definitely had more bad days playing than podcasting. A lot more.
Right here. Right at you.
Who came up with the name? Because the name is fantastic.
I think
RA came up with the logo and the name.
Genius.
Second question, is that actually his real name?
His name's Brian McGonigal.
Okay. Oh,
this guy's named
Can you guys
Admiral?
bleep it out though? I don't think he wants the FBI hearing it.
Yeah, I don't think he's ever paid taxes. I'm just kidding. IRS. But no, he made his blogger name for Barstool Rear Admiral, which I'm not even going to bring up why. Obviously, I think if you're listening, you can understand that rear has something to do with it. Admiral. But he's just been known as the Rear Admiral. So that's how he's gone. And when we started, we had to think of a name. I think the first few episodes were like the Rear and Wit Show or something. And he thought of Spittin Chiclets in terms of shooting the shit and hockey, you're losing teeth. Great name. And then he thought of the logo. We actually sold a t-shirt for a while because he thought of the logo and drew it out. It's the worst drawing you've ever seen, but it's the basis of, a face missing a couple teeth without a nose and eyes with a helmet on. And then his buddy went into the graphic design and made it cool. But yeah, I don't think without the name of the logo, it's what it is. It kind of...
Yeah,
it's awesome.
That name, it's known like, it's like anyone that's into hockey knows like Spittin Chiclets. Like, yeah, you know what it is.